Hello, YouTube world. My name is Jacob. I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis when I was 11 years old. I am now 28 years old. So 17 years ago was when I was diagnosed. And this video, I plan to have serve, kind of a dual purpose. The first purpose is to just kind of tell my story, since, this channel is going to be dedicated to gut health, coming from someone who has dealt with, what I think is pretty much the worst of gut health issues, but also to just give you hope, because no matter what you're dealing with right now, I can assure you that you can find help. And there's a lot more to the story of why you're dealing with your symptoms than you currently might think. And I'm hoping that, as I'm telling my story about, my colitis and the ups and downs and the light bulb moments and what I currently know about, what it seems is actually has caused my colitis, since I'm currently almost in full natural remission. So yeah, the end of this video, the accumulation of this video is going to kind of come up to, what I think and what it seems like has actually caused my ulcerative colitis. So, right now in the Crohn's and colitis IBD world, there's some big important things happening. I don't know if you've been tuned into this or paying attention to this. Maybe you're, newly diagnosed, so you don't know. But a lot of people are achieving lasting drug-free remission. A lot of people are finding their, root causes of, their disease states and finding full symptom resolution. And I've met many people who've done this. I've heard many people on podcasts talk about it, people who have photos of themselves being completely emaciated, which I have my own photo as well. Maybe I'll show you right here. But yeah, there's a lot of people who are figuring out that there's more to UC and Crohn's than their doctors told them there is. And it's interesting too, because there is some very, very convincing research out there just having to do with root cause issues, whether that be increased intestinal permeability, whether that be, a deficiency in phospholipids, which I'm going to talk more about because I believe that has a lot to do with the cause of my ulcerative colitis. Anyway, a little bit about my story. I was diagnosed when I was 11 years old. I was playing with a friend, saw blood in the stool, no pain. Went to the doctor, got checked for hemorrhoids. Fast forward a couple months, and I got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, got colonoscopies, endoscopies, and that was back in 2007 or 2008. First thing my doctor did was put me on heavy antibiotics. And I really regret that I was so young and obviously ignorant to the effects of antibiotics and ignorant to the fact that my doctor was ultimately just throwing darts and, kind of harming me more in the meantime. But I just want to say before I continue that, I really respect GI doctors, and they have really helped me, and they are helping a lot of people. And I'm not against drugs, and drugs, have saved my life in some instances. So, I can't speak badly about them. I think they're a great tool in the tool shed. And, I'm a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner now, and anyone I work with, I would never tell them to not use drugs. If anything, I would recommend they work with a doctor, especially if they're, flaring It's just so important to get things under control. That being said, I'll continue with my story. Much respect for doctors, GI doctors out there. So I had a lot of ups and downs in hospital visits and a lot of anemia from bleeding. Mesalamine didn't really work for me. Prednisone worked temporarily, like it does for most, temporary kind of solution. Eventually, when I was about 16 or 17, I got put on mercaptopurine 6-MP. It's more of a broad spectrum immunosuppressive medication, which is pretty toxic, and dangerous long term. But I was on that for about 5 to 6 years, and that put me in full remission. But I think, as I was growing older, I was just becoming more aware of the potential risks of, immunosuppressant medications. So, when I was about 21 years old, that's when I started really looking into natural health, primarily just diet. I decided to take the leap and get off the medication. And I had recently moved to the central coast of California. My hometown is in, Southern California. So I wasn't really that much in touch with my doctor anymore. I was just kind of picking up my prescriptions, especially since I was in remission. So fast forward a little bit, a few months, I did start noticing like spots of blood on the toilet paper when I would use the bathroom. Nothing too concerning, no pain. And honestly, it went on like that for over a year, just very mild symptoms. I even started seeing another doctor, and he told me after getting biopsies through a colonoscopy that, wow, your symptoms are really mild, and you might not even need medication if you choose not to. So I was like, okay. I was planning to do some traveling at that time, so I was pretty keen on eating really healthy and trying to stay off medication. At that time, kind of healthy diet was really the only part of natural health I was really paying attention to. Now I know there's a lot more to it. So I'll fast forward a bit more. So when I was about 25, my symptoms got just so bad. One day I just started having these crazy fevers and immense explosion of symptoms. And I went to the ER and got some steroids, and kind of for a few years, my symptoms were kind of up and down like that, up and down. And I had some like prednisone tapers I did. I was trying to hold off on using the immunosuppressive stuff or even biologics, just because I had used them for so long in the past. But I wasn't like absolutely opposed to it. But yeah, just trying to, find and research other solutions. A lot of this time between, 25 to 28 years old, I wasn't like severe. I was still, maybe like 5 to 10 bowel movements a day, working out still, having a decent quality of life, not too terrible. Definitely had some rough patches. So when I found functional diagnostic nutrition, I figured it was kind of an opportune, place to be, like becoming a practitioner myself while also, getting the lab work done on myself. And through the lab work, I found a lot. I took the GI map, and, I take issue with some things about the GI map. It's definitely not a perfect test. I have a lot of criticisms against it, but one thing it showed was I had some active, high amounts of active E. coli, enterohemorrhagic E. coli in my gut. So if you research the symptoms of that, it's very similar to ulcerative colitis. So I saw that, I was like, whoa, that's interesting. When did I pick that up? Has it been in my gut all along? Why didn't my doctor find or tell me about this? And, through studying in functional diagnostic nutrition and FDN, one thing I learned is the test, be it blood or stool, is kind of like the lowest of the low tier stuff that's covered by insurance, and not very reliable, not very comprehensive, and I think that's very unfortunate. So, you know, a lot of the more functional health labs are much more telling of what's actually going on in the gut and going on in the body. So I found that, and I also found I had very, very poor bile flow. So not digesting well, also very low pancreatic elastase and high levels of candida. So I worked on these things and I did get better, but I wasn't getting fully better. And I kept kind of getting to this place where I was like nearly in remission. And then I would kind of bounce back, and then nearly in remission and bounce back. And so I kind of reached this place where I was like, you know, I've learned a lot, but maybe I should throw in the towel and hire a practitioner who's been working with people like me for a long time. Okay, so now this is about, you know, 3 to 4 months ago. I hire a practitioner, and basically what I learned is the GI map is really poor at picking up parasites, and that the pattern of, you know, dysbiosis and having low elastase and having poor bile flow is very telling that I had parasites. And, you know, I want to just say that I was very skeptical. I've been very skeptical about, you know, the parasite conversation and the whole conversation about, you know, parasites being, you know, a cause of many people's illnesses, chronic illnesses, autoimmune illnesses. But after my experience of parasite eradication, I can honestly say that my mind has been completely changed. And what I've learned about parasites, you know, just like fungal overgrowth, is parasites aren't always like active pathogenic infections that you get from like tropical countries where you're having this crazy diarrhea and crazy vomiting. You know, sometimes it's opportunistic because a lot of times we live in harmony with parasites and have a symbiotic relationship with them, and they can help our immune system, keep our immune system healthy and strong and in check, right? But we live in a very toxic world, and when we're overburdened with toxicity, and when we're, you know, bombarded with stress, just like with candida and fungal overgrowth or bacteria overgrowth, it gives parasites an opportunity to overgrow and cause problems. And, you know, parasites, they can even shield us from our own toxicities and heavy metals within our body. So sometimes our immune system and body kind of lets them stick around sometimes. That being said, I started working with a practitioner, and he told me we need to do parasite eradication. So among other things, like clearing up some deficiencies, I slowly worked on that. And wow, like, you know, I was always one who's so hyper-focused on my diet, even making a video about that right now for my Instagram. And I now figured out that it was kind of pointless. I mean, diet is really important, you know, I consider it now to be like 20 to 30% of what's important when it comes to, you know, healing the gut. But I don't think it, you know, in my mind, it was like everything. I didn't know anything else. All I knew was I gotta be, you know, AIP, paleo, like perfect, like don't eat grains and la la la. I'm not telling you to go out and eat junk food, but, you know, during this process of parasite eradication and figuring out, you know, some of the deeper root causal issues causing my colitis, you know, I've eaten burgers, I've eaten, you know, quesadillas, and despite that, I've seen more progress than any other time. So that's very telling. You know, I'm not saying go and eat junk. It is very important to eat healthy. The only reason I have been eating some of that stuff is because, you know, I recently went through a breakup, and it's been kind of a stressful time for me. And sometimes reaching for those types of foods is unfortunately how I cope. But yeah, my point is diet's important. It's not everything. Parasite eradication for me, I'm not saying this is the issue for everyone who has ulcerative colitis, for everyone who has Crohn's. It is for some, and I've heard other people's stories that sound just like mine. But okay, so parasites, and there is another, root causal issue that I'm learning. I've probably been dealing with all along. You might have heard of a nutrient called phosphatidylcholine. So our body takes the nutrient choline, and that's found in like egg yolks, beef liver, and turns it into phosphatidylcholine. And this is very important for the structural integrity of our cell membranes. And when our cell membranes don't have this integrity, they can't detox properly, and it causes, increased intestinal permeability, leaky gut. And there's been some compelling research showing that people with ulcerative colitis, 60 to 70% of them have a deficiency in phosphatidylcholine. Let me tell you, if you have a deficiency in phosphatidylcholine, it's basically impossible to be fully healthy, and you're basically definitely going to have some kind of disease state from that, right? So right about the time I started to learn about this and look more deeply into this, because I was hearing about this supplement, phosphatidylcholine, kind of being, passed around and talked about in my community of functional and diagnostic nutrition practitioners. And so I started doing more research about it. And right as I started seeing this research, my practitioner told me, okay, it's time to do, lipid therapy. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I was just reading about that. Yeah, let's do it. When I first took phosphatidylcholine, it gave me the shits. I was like purging stuff. And that's because when you start to fix that cellular membrane integrity, your cells now have the ability, okay, I can now get rid of this toxicity I've been storing. So toxins, deficiencies, pathogens, those are, kind of the root issues of most disease. And deficiencies and toxins is kind of what I'm talking about now. So I'm taking phosphatidylcholine, and I'm starting to ramp up my doses. And to give you an idea of how much, these protocols are helping me, I, on a normal day would use the bathroom, anywhere from 8 to 15 times a day. When I was like doing really well with things and working on some of my, issues I found with my FDN labs, I may have brought that down to 5 to 10 times a day. Today, it's sunset time. As you can see, the sun is coming up over my face soon. I used the bathroom one time today so far, and it was this morning at about 9 a.m. I haven't had any urgency. I haven't had any pain. I'm cruising. I went to the beach today, spent all day at the beach, went body surfing, and it just feels good, It feels good after so long to just like kind of know and be able to trust my body more and feel more safe in my body. And my goal now is to just spread this message, because I understand that, many people, feel like a victim, and that's totally valid. And that's how I felt for so long. For most of my life, I've been dealing with blood in the stool, right? I've had instances where I've almost had to get my colon removed. But I now thoroughly believe that IBD is not permanent. I believe that there's things in our environment, toxicities, pathogens, microbes, deficiencies that are causing this, along with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. I believe that's just on the spectrum with IBD. And yeah, this video might be triggering for some people. And I know there are people out there who think, anything, remotely related to natural healing is just rubbish. It's just pseudoscience. We should just listen to our doctors. They have all the answers. Fine. Like, if you want to think that way, I won't convince you otherwise. I just want you to do what's best for you. And I just wish you full health and happiness in whatever route you take. And I'm just telling my story as it happened, literally as it happened. And you can think I'm lying, you can think that, whatever, but that's my story. I am healing, like literally am healing. And it's not a coincidence that, my bowel movements have gone down this radically while just beginning these therapies. That brings me to the present. And, even though I'm having one to two bowel movements a day now, I still see a little bit of blood in the stool. I'm not like perfectly symptom free, but I can tell you that at the rate I'm going, I feel very hopeful that I'm gonna live an ulcerative colitis free life. And when I am completely symptom free, I probably will get a colonoscopy. And I'm gonna try to do it through a doctor that lives in my local area, and I've heard that he's a very open-minded doctor, and I'm gonna tell him the honest story about how I did this. So that's my story. I hope you found value from this video. Please like and subscribe and share it to anyone you think that it would help. And I'm gonna be uploading a lot more videos about my story, about tips to do with gut health, things that have helped me, things that I've seen helping other people. I'm excited for this journey, and I feel like there's a huge evolutionary process happening right now in the gut healing and IBD, Crohn's colitis space, and I'm excited to hopefully be a voice in that, because we need this evolution. People are suffering so bad. I know how it feels. I swear to God, like there's been times where I was bedridden for 4 months, completely emaciated. And I know how it feels. I couldn't even walk from one room to the other because I was so anemic. I was so pale in the face. I had to have people make my meals for me, and that's really a rough place to be in. And I know there's someone watching this right now who's in that same place, and I want to tell you 100% you can get better. And I just have so much hope that spreading this message could be beneficial for people. So again, like, subscribe, share. I'm going to be uploading more videos about my story and just helpful tips and more stuff like that. So be well and take care of yourself. Stay hopeful, stay positive. You got to become happy before getting healthy. Not healthy and then you're happy. Become happy and then you'll be healthy. So wishing you the best, and talk soon. Peace.